Everyone. Today is June the 30th, and it is 8:48 a.m. with no students present. So we are going to start the recording of English 2, Lesson 1 of Unit number 7. I'm going to start sharing the screen so you can all have access to the presentations that I'm going to be showing. First of all, in the previous lesson, I uploaded some information that is valuable for you about the summary of all the contents for unit number 6. It will be included in your final progress test. There you can see the description of the things that you can do in different places in a shopping center. Also, the expressions and questions that you can find in a situation where you are shopping between the client and the shop assistant. In the next slide, you can see the differentiation between the use of how much and how many to express quantity and to talk about price. And there are also some images that summarize all the information. Also, I added the information about the difference in use of an, some, and any. We have a video that can be very useful for you to understand how to describe food in general, and some adjectives that can be very useful for you. It is not necessary to memorize them all. Just choose your typical ones when you describe taste, shape, touch, and color. When you go to the supermarket, there are different questions that you can ask, and there are different sections that you can find in a supermarket. Look at them and practice them using the video that was recommended in your Aula Virtual. Talking about preference, we studied during number 6 the use of prefer and would prefer and would rather. We finished unit number 6 talking about how to order food in a restaurant. Making requests and reminders was our last class. In that class, we differentiated expressions for making requests and reminders by using the 5 messages, that you have on the left. Today, our mission is to work with unit number 7.1. In unit number 7.1, we are going to start talking about jobs and occupations. So what we are going to be doing first is to revise some vocabulary that might be useful to talk about jobs and occupations. That's why today I prepared this slide so you can all take a look at the information necessary to differentiate 3 words that are always confusing: job, work, and career. What is a job? A job is a regular and official activity that you do. You receive money for it, a salary. It is also called a profession or an occupation. You can have a full-time job, a part-time job. It's up to you. Or an exhausting job, tiring job, successful job, etc. So, work can work as a noun and as a verb. The word work is more general than job. It's not as a specific. When you talk about your job, you talk about your specific occupation, while when you talk about work, it's more as a general noun. Work refers to general efforts and activities done to accomplish a goal. Work can be done both inside an official job and outside a job. For example, you can say, these are expressions that are very useful because there are the prepositions that you have to put next to it to give different intentions. Like, for example, you can say you work at a company or you work for a company. For example, I work at General Motors or I work for General Motors. You can say you're working on when you talk about a project or a task or something that is using your time. Like I'm working on a market analysis, or I'm working on improving customer satisfaction. So what you're working on, you say what you are working on what action. And if it is an action, like in the second example, you use the verb with ing. I'm working on improving something. I'm working on making sales better. You can say you work with when you talk about people or objects. Like, for example, I work with special needs children. I work with many engineers in this project. That's when you talk about people. But when you talk about objects, you say, I work with hazardous chemicals. You talk about the chemicals. In that case, you're talking about the object. The word work also refers to the context of your place of employment. So we can say, I start work at 7 a.m. Okay. When you talk about your career, you're not talking about what you're studying. Like in Spanish, many people say, mi carrera es, for example, ingeniería en minas. Okay, esa es la carrera que tú estudias, but that is in Spanish. But in English, you don't say, my career is mining engineering, because career in English is the total progression of your professional life. It can include many different jobs over the years. So during my professional career, I have worked with many banks or institutions. So you talk about your past since you started as a professional until the moment you're talking. So that's your career, your progress in your professional life. So job, work, and career are absolutely not the same. First, we are going to be talking about jobs and people. There is an expression, he would make a good, or she would make a good, or she would be, when you know the description, the characteristics of a person, and you try to match it with a job, with an occupation. So let's see. Here are some expressions. Here are some jobs and occupations that you can have, like accountant, company director, programmer, architect, electrician, sales representative, bricklayer, a firefighter, secretary, builder, private detective, and university lecturer. Now, we are going to be taking a look at the description of some people like Paul, Sarah, Marcel, etc., Andy, and so on and so forth. And we are going to be seeing what this person would make a good professional. So let's start with the first one. It is about Paul. Paul, if we talk about Paul, it says, Paul isn't very outgoing, but he has a very analytical mind and is good at solving problems. So now that we know the description about Paul, we know that he is not very outgoing, but he has a very analytical mind and good at solving problems. What do you think can be a good profession he can go to? Okay, so a person that is very outgoing, analytical, and good at solving problems could be a very good programmer. So you say he would make a good programmer. Let's go with number 2. Sarah is very confident and outgoing person. She's not afraid of talking to strangers. So this person is outgoing, not afraid talking to strangers, confident. What do you think she would be good at? Okay, so if this person is outgoing and confident, she would make a good firefighter maybe. But if the person is outgoing, confident, and not afraid of talking to strangers, she could make a good professional in any of the professions mentioned here. Because, as we know, being a professional involves all these characteristics. Then it says, Marcel doesn't have much of an education, but he is very good with his hands. One of the professions mentioned here that does not require lots of education is being a builder or a bricklayer, not lawyer, a bricklayer. Remember that a bricklayer is a person whose job is to build walls, right? So if we're talking about a person that does not require much education in the job, but is very good with his hands, can do something active as lad as electrician maybe also. So you say Marcel would make a good electrician, or he would make a good bricklayer, he would make a good builder. Andy has very good observation skills and pays extreme attention to detail. He also has a love for adventure and is very brave. Adventure, brave, observation skills, attention to detail. Okay, so that person would make a good private detective, a good firefighter. He would make a good maybe architect, could be. Okay, so there are descriptive adjectives that can fit with many professions. Catherine is fascinated with buildings. She's quite creative and good at mathematics. So maybe Catherine would make a good architect. Mark doesn't have any qualifications, but he likes helping people, is not afraid of danger. He would absolutely make a good firefighter. Shelley is very good with numbers, but she's a bit shy and generally prefers to work alone. So Shelley would definitely be a good accountant or a good programmer. Daniel is his own boss. He can't imagine working for anybody else. So if he doesn't like working for anybody else and he wants to be his own job, maybe Daniel would be a good company director. So that was for practicing the expression he or she would make a good, and also to taking to a good way of paying attention the adjectives for describing people. But here we have some opposites, again, for describing jobs. If we think that a job says it can be very tedious, the opposite would be it's exciting and interesting. When something is exciting and interesting, it's absolutely not tedious. It can be very stressful. Stressful is the opposite description of it is usually very relaxing. Right? Stressful versus relaxing. Sorry. Yeah. It is well paid. What is the opposite of well paid? Badly paid. And look at the way you write it. Well paid with a hyphen in the middle, with badly paid. You work long hours. The opposite would be a sentence saying you can go home early. Or you work half part-time. Could be. It's very challenging. And it's a piece of cake. Could be the opposite, because challenging is something that is difficult and brain consuming, while a piece of cake is something easy and easy to handle, isn't easy to do. 7, you meet lots of people. And the opposite could be you feel very isolated. Isolated is when you are alone, separated from the rest. It can be dangerous. The opposite could be it's very safe. Dangerous versus safe. You need very good qualifications. The opposite could be you don't need a degree. Remember that qualifications talks about certifications or how to get a certificate in any studies or specialization. There is a reading comprehension where we are going to be talking about a zookeeper. If we read it, you will see that it says, my job. I work as a zookeeper. I'm responsible for feeding and caring for animals in a zoo. I'm responsible for feeding. I work as a zookeeper. Pay attention to those words. It's also my job too. It's also my job to clean the animals' cages, report health problems, and entertain visitors. What are the expressions we have there? I work as a, I'm responsible for with a verb with ing. It's also my job too with a verb. I work as a is the you say your activity. Responsible for, you say the action that you do. It's also my job too, and then you talk about the action that you do again. For this job, you need special qualifications, for example, a degree in biology or zoology. Of course, you need to have a love for animals. Each species is different from the others and requires special attention and care. You also need to be good at keeping records because you have to collect a lot of data from each animal. And you must be outgoing because you need to contact tours for visitors and answer their questions. Expressions that we have here for this job you need. What do you need in terms of qualifications? Then you also need to be good at, goes with a verb with ing, good at keeping records, good at staying with, good at treating. So you must be, and then there's the characteristic, you must be outgoing, you must be entertaining, you must be patient. So what is the characteristic of that person? Then we refresh the vocabulary of the first activities. I find my job, and then it's an adjective again. I find my job really interesting. I've always loved animals, so caring for animals feels more like a hobby than a job. But it can get a bit dirty and tedious sometimes. For example, when you have to clean the cages. And it can also be a little dangerous, especially when animals get sick. They can hurt you. But on the whole, I really enjoy my work. I can't imagine doing anything else. So there you have more expressions. I find my job. It can get a bit. It can also be a little bit, etc. So, would you like to work as a zookeeper? Why? Why not? That was a discussion for today. What were the expressions that we studied about jobs? Look at the questions that you can be asked and you will be asked. What are your responsibilities? What skills or qualifications do you need? What's your job like? How do we answer to those questions using the expressions we have just seen? I'm responsible for with a verb with ing. What was the sentence here? I'm responsible for feeding and caring for animals. It is also my job too with an infinitive. It is also my job to clean the animals' cages. About skills or qualifications for this job, you need. For this job, you need special qualifications. You also need to be good at. You also need to be good at keeping record. You must be outgoing. What's your job like? I find my job really interesting. It can get a bit dirty. It can also be a little dangerous. Now let's do some exercises about the expressions. Here your mission is to match the expressions with the words that you have there. All right? So let's see. I work as a, so it cannot be a degree. I work as a, answering, no, that's a verb. I work as a barman, sales manager, doctor, flight attendant, nurse, teacher. That could be the one. I work as a, that is the answer. I'm responsible for, in the previous slide, we learned that I'm responsible for goes with a verb with ing. So I'm responsible for, and we look for ing. Answering the phone, cooking meals, training salesmen, teaching children. You see? Okay, so I'm responsible for A. It's my job too. It's my job too goes with infinitive. It's my job to sell houses, arrange meetings, design websites, repair cars. So it is letter E. For this job you need, and that is for qualifications, for this job you need a degree in chemistry, an MBA, a certificate in teaching Spanish, etc. You need to be good at. You need to be good at goes according to this slide with a verb with ing. So you need to be good at selling, teamwork, talking to people, working with children. The word can get a bit, according to our slide, is with an adjective. The word can get a bit stressful, hectic, boring, dangerous, exhausting. And finally, I find my job really fascinating, very interesting, so exciting, really motivating. So that was for you to introduce unit number 6. Now we are going to be taking a look at the book pages. First, it's take a look at the vocabulary of Unit 7. There are the description of the jobs in the town and the expressions like in this activity. What's your job? I'm a waiter. I work in a restaurant. What do you do? I'm a taxi driver. Is it an interesting job? Isn't like it? Where do you work? I work in an office. Sometimes it is boring. Also, you can look at the book pages that we have, where you have the jobs and the study subjects. That is not the same. Then there are some questions that we were supposed to discuss, like, for example, what jobs and subjects are good for people who like, for example, working with their hands, with numbers, with words, thinking of new ideas, just like the first exercise we did in the PowerPoint. If we talk about the things that we like doing, then again, we talk about the descriptions of a person to see if they match with any job or any activity. Here in exercise 3, you had expressions to talk about sentences about working. But some sentences are about studying. For example, I have a full-time job. It's about working. I'm a doctor. I work at home. I work in an office. And then another word about work, it's I am unemployed. It's a person that doesn't have a job. I look after my home also. But there we have number 4 and 5 that is about studying. I'm doing a part-time course in catering. I'm studying languages at Berlin University. You can also talk about past activities. If you use the same verbs, but in past, like I worked in a bookshop when I was a student. Okay? Before we finish, we are going to be doing the activity. First, we are going to listen and guess what kind of work they do and what they do in the free time. It is about Pete's and Dagmara's lives. So we are going to listen and we're going to try to find out what job they do, and what they do in their free time.
Pete.
The potato still fruit salad on set. All right, come on, you lot. We got to serve it up by 1 o'clock, okay? Come on, Paul. Let's get
Dagmara.
Proponuję zmienić kurtynę na kolor czerwony. W każdym teatrze jest czarna kurtyna. Chciałabym wymienić tą właśnie na tą premierę. Tak. Pues repetir después de mí. ¿Dónde está el cine?
¿Dónde está el cine?
Muy bien.
Okay, so what we know about Peter and Dagmara is that they have different jobs. About Peter, we could infer, according to what we heard, that he works in a restaurant, but Dagmara is a language teacher. So here we have a reading that says that Pete Chappell is 19 and he's a catering assistant. So we are going to be reading about him now, only about Pete, and we are going to see what he does all day. It says work 12 hours. I work 12 hours on, 12 hours off. Every day I help prepare 3 meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 300 people. I make 10 different fresh salads, peel a 50 kilos bag of potatoes, and wash up hundreds of dishes. I carry a lot of heavy boxes of food to the kitchen, and it's very hot in there. So by the end of the day, I'm very tired. But the time goes fast. Me, 1 hour. After work, I spend 45 minutes in the gym doing weight training. This helps build the strength you need for the job. Then I have a shower. Evening, 3 hours. There's always a film to see in the platform's cinema. This is a small room, so only about 30 people can see a film. I go maybe twice a week. Everyone knows everyone else, and it's good for fun. It's good fun. We also spend a lot of time talking, and some of the guys tell amazing stories. I'm learning a lot about my life, about life out here. Sleep, 7 to 8 hours. Last thing at night, I read in bed or chat with my roommate for around an hour. This is my time to relax. I need around 7 hours of sleep at night. And I also sleep well because I'm so tired after my day's work. Time off, 2 weeks. We work on the platform for 2 weeks, then have 2 weeks off. Traveling home takes a whole day. It's great seeing my friends, but the time goes too fast. Next year, I'm planning to go to catering college in Aberdeen and train to become a chef. I don't always want to work on an old platform. It's too hard. So now that we have the information about Pete, the idea is that next class, we are going to be working with the expression spend, like I spend a certain time like in the gym or doing an activity with ing or with some people. So then we are going to be doing another listening activity about Dorian and her job and her occupation. So that will be for next class, plus 7.2, that is for describing present activities. Say why you cannot do things and the things that you are currently doing. So that would be it for today's lesson, and I'm going to see you in our next lesson. Please do not forget to download the material. I wish you the best. Goodbye.